Recording. So thank you, Bill, for joining me today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you about RadiCare and the design challenge, and just learning a bit more about who you are and your journey and the all the challenges you faced and overcome, and all the challenges you currently face in as an entrepreneur and also as a full-time student in nursing. So tell me a bit about you and RadiCare. How did it get started?
My name is Bill, he, him pronouns. I'm a third year nursing student at the University of Calgary in direct entry program. I created RadiCare Ventures with another co-founder, Kristen Campbell, in 2023 in June. And this idea kind of came about after a couple years of working in the frontline homeless and addiction sector. So I worked as a emergency shelter staff at a homeless shelter, and I also worked in harm reduction, street outreach. And in those interactions with the vulnerable population, I realized that there is no real big players in Calgary that hires inclusively. A lot of people want to work, but there's not a lot of jobs that are offering positions to, basically any of my peers who have a degree or are currently in school, other than, folks who have employment barriers. And that was really one of the key focus of, how can we maybe provide a space for folks that specifically focuses on people with employment barriers. And we don't discriminate and we don't specify what kind of employment barriers you have. It can look like homelessness, addiction, criminal justice involvement, um, disability, whether or not that's visible or invisible, and poverty. Um, and that was kind of the core mission of RadiCare Ventures. And the second part of RadiCare Ventures of why we wanted to do what we wanted to do was that we realized that there's a lot of societal problems that we're facing that are very visible and directly impact everyone's life, and that being social disorder. I don't usually like to use that term, but that term seems to be, the kind of a common definition that everyone goes by. So I'll define what that means. Social disorder basically looks like, drug use in public spaces, vandalism, graffiti, mental health crisis on public spaces, and it's one of the growing concerns if people are going to downtown using public transit. These are all the headliners, on our local news media. In my frontline work, I often work with law enforcement agencies. So whether that be transit peace officers, by law enforcement officers, or Calgary Police Service, and we tag along when we're doing outreach and kind of see how that looks like. And I also worked security for the past year as well, in both hospital settings and also in public parks and parkade settings. So I know that 99% of the job of security is to kind of try to curb social disorder. I found personally when working in security and working with law enforcement that a lot of the approaches out there aren't the best or most effective. And what I realized after doing environmental scans across Canada and the US is that when we hire folks who have lived experience of addiction and homelessness and poverty, and we train them as peer support workers, and they're able to engage with folks on a more personal level, that actually can really increase public safety perception for everyone, not just the general public who uses the public facility, but also for the vulnerable population that are on the facilities as well. And we realize that, in downtown, obviously perception is a really important thing. And that really is 80% of where funding goes to, in terms of increasing uniform personnel on transit, increasing lighting, removing graffiti, etc. And that was the other area that we wanted to go into because we know that we can train staff to really work on the cleanliness side of social disorder as well. So that is to say, we created a company to hire folks who have employment barriers and also to address some of the most visible challenges that we're seeing in the city in terms of social disorder.
What did you mean by perception? And I know you've linked it to the most visible part of social disorder. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great question. So perception is how someone subjectively views a situation. So this differs between individuals to another person. This can be dependent on their lived experience. This can be dependent on their worldview, and this can be dependent on the environment that they grow up with. For me personally, I've never felt unsafe traveling in any public spaces, and even at night. And that comes from a different, background because I've worked in this sector very often. I interact with this vulnerable population all the time, and also I'm a man. Okay, so I don't really have these perceptions of safety issues. Whereas if you're someone who has never been exposed to another person who's using substances in public spaces in your life, and you've been told that drug use is bad and harmful, and that it is criminalized, that's the perception you're going to come into when you're seeing a public space and someone's openly using substances, right? Of course, we don't want kids to be exposed to people using substances in public spaces. And those are the perceptions that we're talking about. When you're looking at a dark space, for example, when you're traveling at night, when there's not a lot of lighting going on, there's garbages everywhere, there's graffiti on a wall, there's vandalism everywhere, there's broken windows, etc. You're going to perceive that space maybe as more unsafe, as to a more public, space where there's lots of lighting, lots of people. You might feel safer there, and that's what I meant by perceptions of safety. Sometimes when you're walking through those dark alleys, etc., 99% of the time you're fine. Nothing's going to happen, but we just feel unsafe, right? Statistically speaking. To increase those perceptions of safety, which encourages people to go to those spaces, that's where we're working on reducing the vandalism, the graffiti, increasing lighting, etc. as a city.
Thank you. That's fascinating. So you've done a lot of frontline work in security and homeless shelters. So tell me, like, how did you start thinking? Because you started the company in 2023,
That's
which is
correct.
very recently, not that long ago. So tell me the process of what you went through, because you're also a full-time student. Why did you choose to start the company now? Um, what led you down this journey? What was going on in your mind when you were like, I think I'm gonna do this, and here's what I want it to look like?
Yeah, maybe I can go back a little bit into high school. So I did junior achievement company program starting in grade 10 when I was going to high school. And at the time, it was just something that I just thought was fun. And, it was a great exposure to kind of business, but I never thought that I was going to go into business, like ever during the program. And then in grade 12, my mom was terminally diagnosed, means life limiting liver disease. So I kind of took on the role of a caregiver and really made decisions, traveled a lot in the healthcare system, social service system. We always grew up in a low income family, but I just never realized how shielded I was away from toxic stress because, my grandparents would just kind of help, push some income along the way when the family really needs it. And I didn't realize any of those realities until grade 12 when kind of that normalcy was ripped off per se. And navigating the healthcare system, I realized how hard it is for someone who doesn't have the ability to advocate for themselves. My mom, first of all, there's the language barrier. Of course, she doesn't speak English. But secondly, she also lacks the mental capacity to make decisions. Her schizophrenia was debilitating to the level that she's not working. She was receiving H, which is the Alberta insurance for the severely handicapped. So I was really the voice that kind of advocated for her. It was also at a time really hard to figure out what she wanted because she doesn't really know as well because of the lack of mental capacity. Anyways, through grade 12, I was able to navigate a lot of social services and kind of learn about the gaps and system holes that exist. That really wanted to push me into learning a bit more about, how does it work for system navigations for other vulnerable population. And in one of the summers, I was at a friend's birthday party. We were walking outside the core mall, and then at the time, I was already kind of doing some, research in homelessness because I was just on the news all the time. And I was curious, and I knelt down next to a person who was holding a sign, and just kind of asked, very naively at the time, why are you not accessing shelters? Have you accessed shelters? And she's told me that her husband got assaulted in the shelter system. And at the time, it was a shock to me, and I didn't realize how bad, well, and how horrendous some of the conditions are that people experiencing homelessness faced, and that's kind of what sparked my interest. And along with my mom's disease progress, I really needed a way to kind of channel in that grief into something positive, and that's how I got started with volunteering in the homeless sector. So I started with the homeless outreach group, very volunteering, very casually. I didn't know anything at all. I was just kind of learning some of basics of handing resources out, learning a little about the system. And then after I graduated high school in grade 12, and after my mom passed away that year, I joined SafeLink Alberta, which is an agency that I still work for today in 2022. And in SafeLink Alberta, I was a summer student, really learning about providing resources for people who use substances, engages in sexual activities, um, as well as addiction and homelessness. And I really partnered with some of the city's most prominent outreach agencies at the time, so like CUPS, um, the Alex, etc. So these agencies I had an exposure to, and at the time I really wanted to get the idea of how about we bring all of these agencies together in a one-stop shop. So that year in 2022 in September, I created the Calgary Public Care Village with Hannah Woodward, who at the time was a social work student at the University of Calgary. And the Calgary Public Care Village was this dignifying way of bringing resources in a one-stop shop, and also offer entertainment and other festival activities that you will see when you go to Stampede or Lilac Festival. And it was really successful. But at the time, the funding part of it was like I applied for two grants, and one of them they gave us $1,000, which it wasn't even Canadian dollars; it was Calgary dollars. So Calgary actually has a currency that we can work in, and I actually used that currency to buy Calgary transit tickets, getting print shops in this one specific business that offered it. And it was really unique to kind of get this really grassroots initiative up at the time. And then in 2023, in January, we held our second Papa Care Village indoors, and we increased our budget to $7,500, with a $5,000 grant from the Calgary Foundation. And that one, we doubled the amount of agencies that came in. We had about 50 or 60 organizations. We had about 100 volunteers, a lot of them from UFC. And we had, music, we had free food, all that kind of stuff. And then, in September of 2023, we held our, outdoor event at Olympic Plaza again. And this time it was even up a little bit more, about $10,000 budget. But it was at that time that I realized, and a little bit before then, in 2023 summer, so I said I launched RadiCare Ventures in June of 2023. And that was because I realized that I really needed some more capital to be running these events sustainably. And of course, I identified those needs in the sector for someone to hire people inclusively and also address some of these challenges relating to safety and cleanliness. And that's kind of how RadiCare Ventures was born. So I guess you could say RadiCare Ventures has multiple fronts. So number one, it diverse revenue generated from RadiCare to the public care village, so we can run that. It also, of course, addresses some of the societal problems in terms of safety and cleanliness. And of course, the core mission is to hire folks who have employment barriers. And it was really neat to be able to combine Public Care Village and RadiCare Ventures together, because this year in 2024, in August, we had our largest event ever. And I was able to contract basically RadiCare Ventures to be at the event to provide some of those safety, monitoring, as well as like garbage removal, which I would have had to contract another company for. So it's reduced the money from the public care village side. And for 2025, we're hoping to actually donate some of the revenue generated by RadiCare Ventures to the public care village to really begin that sustainable revenue generation model. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow, what a journey. So I know that from a previous talk that you've that I've attended where you were speaking at the Social Innovation Hub, you said that RadiCare is not a nonprofit organization, but rather a social enterprise and a Buy Canada certified social enterprise. Can you talk a bit about that and what were your decisions around choosing that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, RadiCare Ventures is not a nonprofit organization. We are a for-profit social enterprise. That means our legal structure is we're incorporated as a corporation, essentially. We then sought out the certification from Social Canada, which I actually have here. So this is the certificate. Oh, I don't think you can see that really. There. But this is a certification, and basically what it is that it basically we had to go to the registry, and we had this very unorthodox request to the registry staff, and that was that we had to limit the revenue generation. It means 51% of the profit that we make in RadiCare Ventures has to go to our core mission as a social profit business. So that means it's either going to the staff members because they have employment challenges, or it's going to the Calgary Public Care Village or another nonprofit organization. It also limits our ability to, massively profit off, right? Where that's not the really the big goal of the company. And it holds me as the company owner who has essentially 100% share accountable, because now we are getting traction. We are making a profit. I could theoretically take all the profits if I wanted to, and profit myself. But because of the bylaw change that we made, it basically limits that capability. So I'm able to take 49% of the company's profit, but not any more than that, essentially. And that's the reason why we strategically chose to incorporate as a social enterprise is that I knew that there will be some sort of opportunity to make a profit off of this, but we wanted to do it in a sustainable way that doesn't deviate from our original social mission.
What does sustainability mean to you?
Yeah, sustainability really means to me in couple sense. So let's talk about financial because I think that's probably the most obvious one. Making sure that enough cash flow is coming in, making sure that the profit can be donated to the Calgary Public Care Village, and that for the Calgary Public Care Village side, we don't have to seek constant funding one after the other. Eventually, the nonprofit organization for that house, the Calgary Public Care Village, is going to be big enough that it probably can access some of this funding, but it's a way to diversify the funding source so that if a governmental grant isn't going to be released anymore or we don't get it, we're still able to run the public care village. Now, for RadiCare Ventures, I want to get it down to a system where eventually separate me, Bill, myself from RadiCare. We need to get to a point where operationally it doesn't depend on me, a single person with my knowledge to run an organization. And that means develop the capacity of the team members to be writing down and formalize the operational procedures and policies, and to really hone down who our ideal customer profile is so that we can do a semi cookie cutter, copy and paste into another market, another city, if I wanted to expand beyond Calgary. And those are some of the processes that I want to continuously to build within RadiCare to be really sustainable. And of course, lastly, is to be sustainable in our social mission. Continuously hire folks who have employment barriers, and then continuously to be serving the mission that we have to address cleanliness and safety in a compassionate manner. And that means to really hold our ground as a company, because we're going to get clients who may be interested in our services but might be asking for things that we don't want to do. And it is me, right now as the owner to say to them, I'm not going to be doing that, so therefore I'm not going to be taking this contract on. Or to say, if I'm going to be taking this contract on, these are the compromises you have to make. And I think that is really powerful to be, as a business owner, to be making the changes that I'm making at that level. And I can give you one example. Just recently, there was a agency that was seeking training for their staff members to handle situations of escalation or to deal with the vulnerable population in a compassionate manner. And this agency is a civic partner of the city of Calgary. It is a large art gallery. So I went on site. I was there for a preliminary review of their procedures, and we got to a topic of washroom checks and letting people use public washrooms. I know from working in the homeless sector and also just as a citizen how difficult it is to find public washrooms accessible, even as a general public, let alone someone who is experiencing homelessness. And oftentimes I hear is that people are not being let in to shops and businesses and facilities because they're experiencing homelessness. And this particular client, potential client, was really considering about closing their public washrooms. So I interrupted in the conversation. I suggested, for my expertise, say, why don't we, change your washroom check policies so your staff is comfortable letting people in to use the public washroom. And we don't have to deal with the potential negatives of people not leaving the washrooms or people damaging the washroom facilities. What if we just had them leave their belongings at the front desk? So there's no taking any substances in the washroom to use it. This way, you're not closing the washroom to the public. You're also not making sure the washroom's not being damaged. And that was the middle ground that we're able to kind of reach. And I think that was really impactful because this is a large facility in downtown that people really can access.
Thank you. So I'll come back to kind of, you said hold our ground and kind of your mission as compassion. So I'll come back to that. But for now, I'd like to ask, so we're doing this design challenge. It's kind of a grassroots initiative. What are the current projects that RadiCare has right now? And what are the things that you hope students now and in the future might be able to help RadiCare with?
Yeah, so we have a couple long-term clients that we're working for, and keep in mind this is only our first year of operation. So we've captured about 30 to 40% of Calgary's business improvement areas, or short for BIA. BIAs are basically
Captured
these business.
30 to 40% in one
Yeah,
year of
so that's
operation?
so there's 15 BIAs in the city. We've captured four and potentially five. I don't know if the
And what
math
is
is
a
right.
BIA? Sorry.
Yeah, BIA is essentially think about it, an association that's formed by businesses that advocates on business interests, and they also provide services to beautify the area to attract customers and tourists to visit their area. And in Calgary, there are 15 BIAs, the biggest one being the Calgary Downtown Association, with over $1 million in budget because they have 1,000 businesses, right? So if you think about Stephen Avenue, that's within CDA, which is the Calgary Downtown Association. So they have flags, they have people working to clean up the properties. They have tons of initiatives to kind of market their businesses so people can come there. For us, currently we're working with the Beltline BIA, which is a relatively new BIA that's formed back in COVID 2020. We are working with Chinatown, Crescent Heights Village, and Martyr Loops BIA, with potentially expanding into Montgomery and Bonus, in which we have conversations with for now. We've also spoken to CDA, which is a big player in the city, with some interest from them too. So with these BIAs, our staff members are doing a comprehensive, like all-in-one kind of thing. And that's actually one of our value propositions. We knew that BIAs have short amount of staff. They're usually run by 1 to 4 people, essentially. So they need a contractor to be doing everything. Pressure washing, graffiti removal, litter pickup, bio waste removal, all that stuff, right? And that was really a discussion with the clients to find out what their needs are. And that's how I realized that that's a unique proposition we can offer in comparison to my competitors, which are regular cleaning companies, right? So those are the contracts that we have. Started last year. We started with Bell and BIA as one contract in August of 2023. And in November, we pick up Chinatown. In June of this year, we pick up Crescent Heights as well as Martyr Loops. So we have these 4 long-term contracts. We also, by extension, do some services for events, and those aren't a core service right now. They're really just, because of the BIAs that they run events, we also offer to them that, hey, we can do cleaning for our event. We can do monitoring of pedestrian traffic for the event and barricades. And that's just another area that we're working in right now. We are also doing, light event setup and takedowns. And actually, we work with the University of Calgary to move some of its most strategic events. So think about this year, we had the Trout Health event, the Calgary Surge event. That was RadiCare Ventures moving the stuff from UFC to those spaces so that they can set up. And right now, what is one of our biggest upcoming area that we're breaking in through will be public washroom monitoring and cleanliness. And we've secured a contract with a pretty big client in the city. Unfortunately, I can't disclose who it is due to confidentiality, but we're going to be opening that up later this year in 2024. And those are some of the big projects that we're working on within RadiCare. So one of the things that we really need help on is actually, because the other value proposition we're offering to the BIAs and our clients is to produce visualization of the data that we collect so they can get more funding to hire us. Um, and to do that on a monthly basis, we're producing a report to the BIAs. Um, and that takes a lot of time for my operations manager to go down to the Google Forms because our shifts, there's 40, 50 shifts that they have to go through. It takes up a whole day. My operations manager, Vakuo, is also an international student, so he's also got his own studies as well. So we really want to maximize the time here. So we need help to create some sort of visualization dashboard that can easily punch in the data, punch in the numbers, and come up with a good to visualize report on a monthly basis. And then we also need some expertise to help us create this kind of custom service request centralized platform. Because one of the other things that we offer to our clients is that their businesses within the BIAs can access our cleaning services for free since the BIS has contracted us. And that's one of the other value propositions. But right now, businesses are sending emails in, which is hard to take care of, to look at. We easily make mistakes, and we have actually made mistakes because of the lack of communication between emails coming in and to my frontline team that's actually doing the service request. So we need a way where the frontline team can communicate with the client without going through me, because they're going to be doing operational stuff, and I don't know anything down the operational stuff that they'll be doing because it's very specific. So those are the two projects that we're wanting assistance on. So number one, data visualization, and number two, a customer service request platform.
Thank you. I think so. We'll probably get into the design challenge details once we get into the design challenge on Saturday, November 2nd. So maybe I'd like to just ask you about what are the challenges you've experienced on this journey doing this, and what have you learned about yourself? And that's too many questions already.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a full-time nursing student. I have a full course load, and I think nursing is very demanding. Has a very demanding schedule. Like literally, you cannot miss clinicals, for example. In our faculty, we cannot miss more than two clinical days, or else you have to have a conversation with the associate dean, and you might fail the program and then have to restart. So that puts an extreme strain. And also, our lectures are 3 hours long, and those are probably mandatory because they do quizzes and all that kind of stuff, especially this year. And it's also very fast paced. And having to juggle, learning content and actually applying the content in practice has been very, very challenging, especially in this year when I'm in my third year of my program. The last 2 years has been okay because the courses are not as intense as it is in third year. So I was able to kind of really do a lot of the grunt work to start up the Public Care Village and RadiCare Venture. And I'm grateful for the ability to spend about 60 or 70% of my time actually on those projects and not school. But this year, thankfully, I have a team that's built up. I'm not on the ground physically doing these operations or supervising. I'm able to dedicate a lot more time to school. Like I'm really spending about 60, 70% of my energy on school preparation and 30% on RadiCare Ventures and Public Care Village. And right now, ramping up my operations, like I'm having conversations with stakeholders on a weekly basis. And oftentimes before those meetings, like I am actually in class. I just learned like nursing stuff. I have to do it right after. So it's really hard to juggle back and forth between studying for the content and also doing RadiCare Ventures. And this year, my grades aren't, as good as last few years. I'm scoring B's and B plus on midterms, which I understood was going to happen anyways because of the complexity of the lectures. But it's hard to adjust from getting A's in class to B's and B plus. So that really is a mental adjustment for myself. But I knew that I'm not out here trying to become the best nurse that I could ever be because my energy is limited, and I need to strategically choose where I spend my time. And that's why I still keep RadiCare Ventures going. I still have these key meetings because they are the key to the growth of the company. And I have to realize that there are sacrifices that I have to make, and I'm not doing too bad overall as well. And last year when I first launched RadiCare Ventures, my challenge was I didn't really know anything about business. Doing junior achievement was great, and it gave me the grunt work of exposure to some of key terms, but I don't really actually know what I'm doing, right? So I joined Innovate Calgary, it's incubator program. I think I'm probably the only undergraduate student that was in the program at the time. I remember my first meeting in the incubator. It was There was a professor sitting next to me, another professor who's also a physician and department head sitting in front of me, a registered nurse turned entrepreneur. Like it's just a lot of people who like figure their stuff out, and I was just there. I'm a nursing student, right? And it was just really funny to kind of see that everyone there actually had challenges with business because that's not their background. So really quickly, we kind of built this bond, and we were able to talk about what we're working on. And I quickly was able to work with my coach and really focused on, learning about my ideal customer profile, what that actually means, and to really talk to the clients. And at the time, I also accessed student support. So yes, they were interns, and yes, they were practicum students, but I was really there as a mutual learning opportunity. They were there learning about how to work with a client, and I was there to actually learning what they're learning through business school. So I worked with a Master of Management student to really come up with, marketing strategies and pitch decks that I then subsequently presented to city partners and potential clients. And with my fifth year, bachelor of, commerce student, she really helped me do a lot of these core discoveries with customers and strategic planning with business development. And I was really thankful for that. And at the time too, one of the hardest thing I would say that really put me into a burnout was realizing that I am hiring people who depended on me. Their livelihood really depended on me. And at the time, I was struggling to find clients. And my operations manager is telling me that, staff is really struggling. They can't find work. They really need more hours. And I really took that to heart. And then this year, I am changing that because I know I'm doing my best. And I also need to make sure to prioritize what the demands are. Again, we're entering into that winter season where works probably isn't the most there. For example, our Chinatown contract is ending November 30th. We're cutting down on our Crescent Heights contract. But this year, obviously, is better than last year because we have a full-time Beltline contract. We still have Marta Loops. We're beginning this big project as well. But of course, operationally, we need to reduce some of the hours. And I have to, tell myself, like, yes, staff are making their livelihood out of the company, but I also have to be reasonable about what am I prioritizing. The company's success and its ability to provide more work opportunities for everyone or individual staff members' needs. And that's a really hard balance to find because I know these staff members. They've interacted with me and I'm their boss, right? And I'm making these strategic decisions that may not benefit the one person that really needs it, but it's for the good of the company overall.
Wow. So, in terms of priorities, where does your own well-being end up in there?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I have to tell myself, like, yes, there's lots of issues I'm working on right now, but I also have to make sure that I'm okay. With school demand, with company demand, and also just personal stuff going on at home. My grandma suffered from a stroke in August of this year, and she has a lot of needs right now. And I have to make sure that I'm taking a step back, and that also comes down to delegation of stuff. So I'm not the frontline supervisor. I don't know everything that goes down in a company, and I don't need to know that. That I'm leaving up and empowering my operations manager and my new supervisors to really take the hands and take control. Unless something is really necessary that they require my input, they're welcome to make those decisions. And I think that's really the beauty of running a business, right? So you don't need to know everything, but you need to recognize what are you good at, what are you not good at, and delegate with the stuff that you're not good at to someone who is good at those things, right? And I've really found a good team who is able to kind of handle the fundamental logistics, supply chain management, scheduling, all that kind of stuff, in which I have no interest in, to be honest. And I also find that as a headache. So that is one way that I'm taking care of myself, is to make sure that I'm not doing everything. And of course, in school is making sure that I'm studying right after the lectures. I have a very rigorous schedule that I'm working on, and that's to prevent the stuff piling up in the end before the exams, and prevent me from having to cram. I also, have caregivers at home for my grandma, so I'm not the caregiver for her. Because I think that really gets to a sense of caregiver resentment if I'm providing those very intimate care when it's a very sudden transition from being cared for to being a caregiver. And of course, I'm hanging out with friends. Today I made time to see a friend who was coming from Toronto just for an hour, very short. It was an impromptu, despite I had lots of stuff going on. But that really helped me kind of prioritize myself and my social connections. Yeah.
Do you have any spiritual practices that you, or rituals that you follow that kind of keep you grounded and centered so that you can take on this big role as a student and also in your company?
Yeah, so I mean, I journal when times are tough, and I definitely have done that when it's my mom's loss, and when the company wasn't doing so good. In my subjective perception, when I'm putting words down, I'm a very logical person. I like to separate facts from emotions, and when I look at objective facts, I can say to myself, like, I've done a lot. And yes, I can compare myself to other people my age doing other crazy stuff going on, but that's not my life. And objectively speaking, I'm at a very privileged position today. Like, I do not need to worry about finding jobs when I graduate. And instead, I'm providing a job to other people. Like, that's kind of incredible. So having those self affirmations and really validating myself and my progress grounds me. And also, talking to people who's been affected by my work, and really seeing the students, because I have addiction studies, and social work students that are directly under my supervision right now, and that really is valuable because it shows to myself, like, I've never received formal training in addiction support or social work, but I have the amount of expertise that I have as a nursing student, having done so much community work, that I'm a practicum student, a student supervisor. So these students are literally doing their first year of bachelor social work studies or their addiction studies through Both Valley College, and I'm their supervisor. So having those just grounded me, and realizing that um, really I'm at a good place, and those there are gonna be bumps in the way, but we're just gonna be turning that into a problem-solving mode and really look at solutions rather than looking at what are the potential negatives that may happen.
Thank you. So we have 15 minutes left. I wanted to ask you if you were to give some advice to students who will be attending the design challenge and any other student who watches this talk, is there any advice or guidance or wisdom or lessons, reflections you would share with them as they think about where they are now? Some of them are in first year, some of them are in the later part of their degree, and where they might want to go in the future. So advice for students.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you don't need to have everything figured out. I don't have everything figured out. There are literally stuff that I'm thinking about, for the business wise, for school wise, for what I want to do career wise. I don't know. Like I know generally, I want to go into public policy. I want to affect systemic change, but how do I get there? I have no idea, and that's okay, because I'm also just 20 years old. And really talking to people, really I enjoy connecting with folks at different life stages, doing interesting things. I have a very diverse interest, and that's what I push myself to do. Is that I'm doing unconventional stuff compared to maybe my peers who are in nursing. Instead of doing healthcare aid stuff, I'm developing my company. I'm also have done homeless shelter, street outreach, and security stuff. And when I'm in those sectors, basically none of the peers, those colleagues I've been exposed to, have a nursing background. So I contribute very interesting background, but I also obtain very interesting knowledge. So I really enjoy doing that because it's kind of like a sociological experiment to me. Whenever I'm starting a new job, it's usually casual. Like I'm not doing all of those at once full time, but I kind of come in and I want to understand the sector. I want to understand how it impacts the clients I'm serving, which are the vulnerable population. And that really helped me build this holistic knowledge base from a health service perspective, from a social service perspective, and also from a security and law enforcement perspective, and lastly, from a public policy and urban planning perspective. And I think just talking to people who you think are really super cool and reaching out is like a good first step. And you know, it'll be okay. Like I think we're often caught in these hedonic treadmills, which one thing after the other. You achieve one thing, you want the next, and also we oftentimes overemphasize on the end goal and overemphasize on our own feelings of excitement or our own feelings of resentment or disappointment after we achieve something. But in reality, when we get to that stage, we're always it's always kind of anticlimactic. It was a good thing, and also it's not that bad. It was a bad, not so great thing, and that's what I found so far.
Thank you. So you said at some point in the interview, you said it's important to know what you're good at and not good at. What do you think are the unique things that you are really just good at? And what are the things that you don't think you want to do? And how did you come to awareness of those things?
Yeah, I mean, like first of all, I am by no means an expert in creating financials. I actually have yeah, I just have no crew, and that's also not a space of interest. So my dad actually is an accountant. So I was able to get his assistance on doing bookkeeping, accounting stuff, and then we're gonna have a budget session just planning out for the company, because that's really not a good area that I'm good at. I'm also not good at the finer details of the cleaning operations, right? I've never even done cleaning professionally in my life. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I actually relied on the staff that we're hiring who have cleaning experience to tell me what supplies they need, what training they need, and I just go ahead and get them, right? I'm also not good at supply management. So we have a lot of cleaning supplies that we have to buy, keeping track of things. Not good at that at all. So my operations manager comes from a supply chain management background, so that part is solid. And my next piece that what I think I'm good at is bringing those perspectives from social service and health service with trauma informed care into a company setting. The reason why we hire the way we hire is very intentional, and that's where my expertise shines through because I've worked with these folks. And from an empowerment approach to progressive discipline is important. We recognize that there are certain things in the staff's life that may impact their job performance, and that's an area that I really have to remind management is that yes, we're doing a good job, but we have to balance with the staff's needs, and of course vice versa, right? The other good thing that I feel like I'm pretty good at is being able to connect the right persons together. Um, I've actually gotten so many people jobs so far, whether or not that's in nursing, in social work, or within my company. Right, I'm a pretty good connector, I would say, and I have good connections across the board, and that's where I think I've shined through is my ability to connect like-minded people together. Um, my I guess the next good thing that I'm at is really having this open mindset and ability to be humble and learn from others. Like I said, like I'm a practicum supervisor, and usually when you think about a practicum supervisor, they have expertise in these knowledge, and I can straight flat tell you I do not. And instead, it's a mutual learning experience between my students and I, and we learn together. And I think that is one of probably the biggest thing that if anyone wants to be in a leadership position is to know that even you're a leader, there are absolutely still stuff that you don't know, and that even your interns, your subordinates, whatever it may be, have a lot of knowledge that you should be learning from and you should be receptive to. And that's what I'm really glad that I'm keeping an attitude of that.
Thank you, Bill. So maybe to conclude our interview today, you talked about in the future moving into potentially public policy and systemic change. Would you like to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, like I really think that I think I'm a pretty engaged citizen. I'm on a board actually of the Chinatown Business Improvement Area and being really connected to Chinatown BIA, thinking about the stuff that we can do to ensure people are living in a healthy environment really sparked me. I've had good connections with a couple of politicians in the city, whether or not they're councilors or MLAs, and that's an area of interest, though I don't know if I would want to go to a bureaucratic position or into a elected official position. But I certainly am interested in that area because I think that's where, and also in nursing, we learn that building healthy public policy is actually one of the most important money saving and life saving measures. Even though it could be boring, you're not out there saving lives, you're not doing CPR, chest compressions, pushing epi into someone who just had a cardiac arrest. But I'm there actually analyzing how did we get to this stage? This person is having a cardiac arrest due to substance, overdose. How is this person even engaging in addiction in the first place? And I think that's where a lot of powerful decisions can be made to prevent someone from being exposed, and from what we know from research, of toxic stress when they're growing up as a child, right? And I think investing upstream in these public health initiatives is so important, and that's what I'm really, really passionate about.
What did you mean by upstream? And then how does all your personal lived experiences with frontline work now link with systemic thinking?
Yeah, the easiest way of upstream is the word prevention, preventing something from happening from the first place. So, for example, I can even think about my own. Yeah, let's say my clients, they're currently in a state of homelessness. Upstream would be how do we prevent this person from entering into homelessness, and more importantly, reducing the modifiable risk factors in their lives. A lot of my clients enter into homelessness because of their childhood. They receive so much trauma from their household, and moving upstream is about how do we prevent those trauma from happening so the child has a healthy childhood, right? And oftentimes, so much of what we're happening or what we're seeing in the health system, social services system, and criminal justice system is that people are the way they are because of a lot of you know childhood, trauma, toxic stress, and there's no good public policies that are preventing that. Instead, we're spending tons of money on, rehabilitation, whether that's actually of a client who is now, disabled, right? That's a lot of costs in healthcare wise. That's a lot of costs in criminal justice system, hiring police officers, peace officers, correctional facilities, and staff to operate and run and try to rehabilitate these people. So moving upstream simply means how do we now turn public policies, whether that be building housing, for example, parenting support, child support, etc., that can prevent these persons receiving those stress. Um, and what was the second part of your question? If you had any?
I think I asked what you meant by upstream and then how it linked to your focus on systemic change.
Yeah, and of course, like if you're preventing people from entering into a state of distress, whether that's illness or homelessness, systemically you're gonna be pouring less money into those downstream options, which is your emergency department, your tertiary care centers, your criminal justice system, your police, peace officers, and correctional officers, um, and it will really allow these professionals to focus on stuff that they actually sign up for. And as an example, police officers and peace officers aren't trained to be social workers. Yet 90% of their interactions are with people who have lots of social challenges. Instead, why don't we provide the resources needed to social services and allow those police and peace officers to work on much, much more important cases of murder, violent assaults, and robberies, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then in terms of the health system, giving the resources needed to primary care teams so that people are being caught and they're not entering into a disease state where they need to be hospitalized for months, right? So those are the systemic changes I'm anticipating from upstream approach.
Thank you, Bill. So to conclude, are there any resources that students can read or look at that you would point them to that inspired you, or just to learn more about the work you do or certain areas of, this type of systemic change that you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say get involved. I think UFC offers a lot of programming in Hunter Hub. They have a map the system challenge, which I really think is a good basic foundational place where people can learn about system thinking. Because oftentimes, whether or not you're in business or in comp sci or engineering or whatever, we're very solution oriented. But the problem really is if you're jumping to solution first without thinking about the problem, there's going to be a mismatch between your product and end users. Your end users may tell you, hey, like that's super cool that you just did, but I don't even care about that at all. That's not my priority, and I'm not going to use it. And that's a mismatch that's happening in real life, right? When we think about policies that government produce or products that businesses and engineering companies produce as well. And I would say, really, join these social innovation challenges, going to stuff that you really have an interest about, just learn more and talk to people. That's a really good way to start as well.
Thanks, Bill. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that I missed?
I think that's probably everything. I'm really looking forward to meeting the students on November 2nd.
That's awesome. Okay, thanks so much. We will wrap it up and then we'll see you and all of the students on November 2nd. I will stop recording now.